guys, it's me Rebecca. So I am here today to do my March wrap up as well as discuss a couple books I plan to read in April so far. So yeah, let's get started with the first book I was able to finish in March, which was Ink Blood Sister Scribe by Emma Torres. And this is about this family who've guarded a collection of ancient and rare books for generations. Books that let people walk through walls or manipulate the elements. Books of magic that half-sisters Joanna and Esther have been ways to revere and protect. All magic comes with a price through and for years the sisters have been separated. Esther has fled to a remote base in Antarctica to escape the fate that killed her mother, and Joanna's isolated herself in their family home in Vermont, devoting her life to study of these cherished volumes. But after their father dies suddenly while reading the book Joanna has never seen before, the sisters must reunite to preserve their family legacy. In the process, they'll uncover a world of magic far bigger and more dangerous than they ever imagined, and all the secrets their parents kept hidden, secrets that span centuries, continents, and even other libraries. And we follow these two sisters. Esther has, every year since since she turned 18, she's moved to locations on this day because her father said that it was important for her to do so in order to keep the family safe. And for some reason, she didn't tell Joanna of what her father told her, and Joanna just thought she's been abandoned by her half-sister. And besides these two sisters, we meet another character whose name I have forgotten, but he is able to create these magical books, and it just takes a lot from him. Like, he's quite ill. In order to create these books, it's something to do with the blood a person has, and not everyone is able to do it. It's only certain people who have this ability to create these books, and it's like Miss Bloodletting. Like, when he draws blood to write these books, he has to perform this ritual, and then it's like when you get your blood taken for like a blood test sort of thing. So yeah, it was quite interesting. And you see how people are keeping the secrets from one another, not because they want to, but because they're unable to speak these secrets out loud because of some promise, or because they're under a spell themselves. Like, they're literally unable to say what these secrets are unless like the spell is lifted. And we do see the ritual to get blood involves doing something that brings magic to the person, and it is quite interesting to see that. And really, we see how complicated family is, like how we'll lie to either protect them or for our own selfish purposes, or both, really. Like, you see the complexities of family that does come into play in this plot. So yeah, overall I just enjoyed this book. It was very interesting, and yeah, I gave it a 4-star. Now the next book I was able to finish in March was Jade Legacy by Fondeli, and this is the third book in her Greenbone saga. The first book is Jade City. I'm just going to give the synopsis to Jade City, as this is the third book and the concluding book to this trilogy. So Jade City follows these characters in a country called Kiton, and these people, certain people in Kiton, they're able to wear jade, which gives them these abilities. And the jade is controlled really by the clans, and there are two major clans in Kiton. Mountain and No Peak, and we see with in the first book the rivalry between these two clans, how they try to kill each other, and there's like, I guess, this clan war that spans throughout this entire series. And with this concluding book, it spans over like 20 years, which is, I think, the longest timeline. I think the first couple books, like the second book, I want to say just took place over a series of a few years, and I don't remember the timeline for the first book because I read it back in 2023. But with this one, we see how the newer generation is growing, how the previous generation, they kind of are learning from the mistakes their parents made with raising them, and they try to do better with this newer generation as well. We see, I guess, how technology is transforming, how it's inventing, how the media is inventing, how they are utilizing the media to kind of, I guess, control the narrative of how things are, which is something I do find interesting. And yeah, and I do like how we still see how people don't really understand the green buttons, and there are still this bias against them, that they are horrible people, they're not really human, they will kill anyone and anything like that. And I think the bias against them, which is quite interesting to see. And we do see how traditions are changing, how the newer generation are drifting away from the traditions that the older generation holds, and how the older generation kind of has to accept these changes and accept that things aren't always the way that they once were. That the world is changing, and they have to accept these changes no matter what. And overall, I did enjoy it. I enjoyed seeing like these characters who we grew to love, how they're becoming parents of this newer generation, and how they're seeing like how their ways, I guess, no longer is applicable to this newer generation, how the way they did things has changed so much. And yes, that was quite interesting. And seeing like how the younger generation, they aren't really falling into the walls that the previous generation wanted them to fall into, and they just have to accept that. So, overall, I very much enjoyed this concluding novel, and I gave it 5 stars. The next book I finished in March was Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, and this is about Jane Eyre, and we follow her with the loneliness and cruelty of her childhood, and how it strengthens her natural independence and spirit, which proved invaluable when she takes a position as a governess at Thornfield Hall. But after she falls in love with her sardonic employer, her discovery of his terrible secrets forces her to make a heart-wrenching choice. And with this one, we see how Jane, she didn't really have an independence as a child. If her cousins were horrible to her, she was blamed for it, how her aunt thought her cousins were these perfect people, and that Jane was nothing. She was just this burden she had to deal with, because Jane's uncle, her husband, wanted her to be taken care of after her parents died. And her parents, I guess they were like, I wouldn't say, I guess, the black sheep of the family. Like, her mother was disowned by her father after she married Jane's father, who was this poor, clerk, I wouldn't say it was. I don't remember. My memory is really bad. I'm so sorry. See how Jane, she doesn't really have much independence when she's at school, because she has to conform, and her schedule is the same. It's very repetitive, and she finally has this freedom when she goes to Thornfield Hall and becomes the governess to the ward of Mr. Rochester, and see how Mr. Rochester and Jane kind of fall for each other. And yeah, I did like the banter between the two of them, how it was sometimes quite entertaining. And we see how Jane, she just craves freedom, she craves independence, she craves to be in a position where she makes her own decisions. And I can see, at the time where this might have been looked down upon, and where Jane's character might have been looked down upon, because she is quite independent. She's quite unlike women of this time period, something like that. And I did enjoy that, and yeah, I enjoyed this story, and I gave it 4 stars. The next book I was able to finish in March was When Women Were Dragons by Callie Barnhill. And this is about this world where women just turn into dragons, and it's not really much talked about at all. Like, the government tries to keep it under wraps. Like, scientists who try to do research about it, they lose their jobs, they're blacklisted from the community. Like, any scholars, librarians, anyone who does research will face consequences, and so does the media when they try to report it. Like, we see how the media, they will be fined or suspended, or like they'll lose money. And as well, people in general, like dragoning is something that's been associated with being feminine, and anything feminine is just not talked about. Like a few times it's like almost like talked about like a menstrual cycle almost, which is quite interesting. Like, and people are told to keep their eyes down and keep them away from the sky. And if a woman turns into a dragon, like they pretend that they no longer exist, that they've never existed, like. And you know if it's like that until 1955, when there was this mass dragoning event where hundreds of thousands of women sprouted wings, scales, and talons and took to the skies. And we see how Alex is affected by this because her aunt transformed into a dragon, and her mother could have but chose not to. And we see how that decision affects Alex's life and affects her mother and whatnot. And we see how generally, like over the course of this novel, the world is changing and gradually becomes more and more, I guess, accepting of the fact this is just how things are and how society is changing over time. And I also found it interesting because this is during a time period where women are expected to mold and fit into this mold that society's created, like be a good housewife, take care of the household, take care of the family while the husband works, like be submissive to the husband even if he's horrible. And with this dragoning event, it almost gives the women freedom to finally be free of these horrible husbands, to be free of these responsibilities that they might not have wanted. And it was all quite interesting, and it's really like about how women just choose to, or they just choose not to conform to what is expected in their lives. And overall, I did enjoy this novel, and I gave it 4 stars. Now, the next book I was able to finish in March was What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher, and this is a retelling of The House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe. And I've read a few of his works, but I'm quite unfamiliar with The House of Usher, so I probably should have read it, but it's because we do follow a couple of characters, what is it? Roderick and Maddie Usher, and who are characters in this novel, but really we follow Alex Eston, who is a retired soldier, and they receive word that their childhood friend Madeline Usher is dying. They race to the ancestral home of the Ushers in the remote countryside of Montana. I'm sorry if I butchered that. What they find there is a nightmare of fungal growths and possessed wildlife surrounding a dark, imposing lake. Madeline sleeps, walks, and sleeps in a strange voices at night, and her brother Roderick is consumed by a mysterious malady of the nerves. Aided by a redoubtable British mycologist and a baffled American doctor, Alex must unravel the secret of the House of Usher before it consumes all of them. And with this novel, it's not in any way similar to Mexican Gothic, but it gave me similar vibes of Mexican Gothic by Silvio Moreno Garcia, with this house that's in disarray, like it's falling apart, like it's crumbling, and with the mushrooms and the spores and all that, like it gave me the vibe of Mexican Gothic, and I did like the atmosphere of it, and really how Alex and this American doctor, who they're not like superstitious or anything, but when weird things are happening, it's like they can't help but to question if what's happening is actually happening. Like they cannot wrap their minds around it, and like terrifies them, and they think they're just losing their minds, which is quite interesting. And we also see like before the weird stuff really happens, how the hairs around this house are acting odd. Like instead of hopping, they're just sitting there and they'll stare at you, and then they're like, walk away, and it's all very much strange. And yeah, I don't really want to say more than that because this novel is quite short. It is more like, I think, a novella, like at only 170-ish pages, so yeah, but overall, I did enjoy this, and I definitely enjoyed the atmosphere of this novel, and I gave it 4 stars. And the last book I was able to finish in March was The Last Housewife by Ashley Winstead, and I do have to say that if you need trigger warnings, read them. Ashley Winstead actually, let me find that, actually has a content warnings page in the novel itself, and yeah, I'm not gonna read any of that because I don't think YouTube would like that, but still, just look it up if you need it. But this is about this woman named Shay Evans, and while she was in college, she and her best friends met a captivating man who seduced them with a web of lies about the way the world works, bringing them under his spell. By senior year, Shay and her friend Laura were the only ones who managed to escape. Now, 8 years later, Shay built a new life in a tiny Texas suburb. But when she hears the horrifying news of Laura's death, delivered, of always, by her favorite true crime podcast, Crusader, she begins to suspect that the past she thought she buried is still very much alive, and the predator is more dangerous than ever. Including the help of the podcast host, who is Shay's childhood best friend, Shay goes back to the place she vowed never to return to in search of answers. As she follows the threads of her friend's life, she pulled into a dark, seductive world, where wealth and privilege show brutal philosophies that feel all too familiar. When Shay's obsession with uncovering the truth becomes so consuming that she can no longer separate her desire for justice from darker desires newly awakened, she must confront the depths of her own complexity and conditioning. But in a world built for men to rule it, both inside the cult and outside of it, is justice even possible? And if so, how far will Shay go to get it in? You learn pretty quickly that Shay's friend Laura, she wasn't really able to escape from the cult. Like, she was lured back into it. It seems like Shay was able to flee to practically the other side of the country, because where they went to school was in New York, and Shay's now living in Texas. And it seems like her friend Laura, like, she never even left that town where the university is in. She worked for a catering company for a bit, and then lost that job, and then kind of fell off the face of the planet, like only resurfacing every once in a while. And it's all very much strange, like. And Shay herself, while physically she was able to escape, there are some behaviors in her current life that might be, I guess, similar to the lesson she was taught while in the cult. Like, she worked for this magazine, I think it is called The Slice, and she wrote like feminist pieces and whatnot, and then she quit because she wanted to write a novel, and her husband was encouraging of that. I think it is mentioned that he actually told her to quit, but she becomes a housewife, and she realizes she's fully financially dependent on her husband, and he has that power over her, and she's not really writing. Like, she claims she has writer's block, but really it seems like she's lounging by pool, hosting events for her husband, like looking like the perfect wife. I mean, she's just a housewife, and seeing how psychologically she's still affected by her time in the cult was also quite interesting to read about. And really, we see how they fell into the cult, how Shay, her friend Laura, and her friend Cam, it took Cam's death for them to leave the cult, or for them to really flee the cult, and we later learn like how much the cult has power over things like in a university and whatnot. Like, it's something that's been building up for years, has been building up since Shay left, and I think that is quite interesting. And we learn about Shay's time in the code through these recordings she and the podcast host Jamie are doing, and she tells us like how she got into it and how like I mean, it's like unknowing she was in a code. Like it was like she was led to believe that it would be safe staying in a house with this man and staying there at all times and listening because he has her best interest at heart and all that. That's maybe something really like he took advantage of the fact that Laura and her friends, they were these impressionable women in their early 20s who they all came from backgrounds that were, I guess, quite unpleasant. Like, there isn't anything to do. Like, for Shay, it was like her father leaving the family, or her father dying and her mother kind of falling apart, and him with her family not understanding him, and they finally found this man, this father figure who understands them and has their best interests at heart and won't abandon them in any way. So, yeah, saying that it's like the manipulation, oh my god. And yeah, and overall, I cannot say I enjoyed this, but it was very much interesting to say the least, and overall I gave it a 4-star. Now that is everything I was able to read in March, and what I plan to read in April so far. Everything else I read in April will be in my April wrap up. But after the last housewife, I'm sorry, but I'm looking at this picture of In My Dreams I Hold a Knife. I was about to say that title. I plan to read There by Tommy Orange, and this is about these 12 characters from native communities all traveling to the big Oakland powwow, all connected to one another in ways they may not realize. Among them is Jackie Wetfeather, newly sober and trying to make it back to the family she left behind. Dean Oxenden, pulling his life together after his uncle's death and working at the powwow to honor his memory. 14-year-old Orville, coming to perform traditional dance for the very first time. Together, this chorus of voices tell of the plight of the urban Native American, grappling with a complex and painful history with an inheritance of beauty, spirituality, with communion and sacrifice and heroism. And yeah, I'm just very much intrigued about this one. And after that, I think I might go into Piglet by Lottie Hazel. And this is about Piglet, who is this cookbook editor at a London publishing house. She's got lovely loyal friends, a handsome fiancé Kit, whose rarefied family she actually most of the time likes, despite their upper class egocentrism. One of the many things Kit loves about Piglet is the delicious, unfathomable, elaborate meals she's always cooking. But when Kit confesses a horrible betrayal 2 weeks before they're set to be married, Piglet finds herself suddenly hungry. The couple decides to move forward with the wedding as planned. But as it nears and Piglet balances family expectations, pressures at work, in her quest to make the perfect cake, she finds herself increasingly unsettled, behaving in ways even she can't explain. Torn between a life she's always wanted and the waviness that comes with not getting what you know you deserve, Piglet is, by the day of her wedding, a mess, but also ready to look beyond the lies we sometimes tell ourselves to get by. So, yeah, I'm very much intrigued about that as well. And yeah, that's it. So that's everything I was able to read in March and what I plan to read in April so far. And yeah, that's it for this video. So if you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment below telling me what you've been reading recently. If you want to, please subscribe to this channel. And if you want to follow me on any social media, then all those things are down bar below. I'll see you guys next time.